This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm so much more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. We are somewhere in mid-30s for episodes, so we're doing something different today. We're in mid-October here in upstate New York, so it's safe to say that we're in the midst of spooky season, getting close to Halloween. The leaves are changing colors, falling off the trees, so we're doing something different. Bill has his own experience with dealing with haunted houses as an investor. So that's mostly what we're going to discuss today. Bill, do you want to take that one step further?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Steve. And I don't have a black cat at my feet, but I have my tiger cat at my feet at my house. It's funny how things work that way. But yeah, it's Halloween season, and my crew, the entire staff, had a very interesting experience, which was talking points for at least a month. And one thing led to another, and I'm excited to share this with the audience.
This story came up. I don't remember how it came up. It was, one day in the office, started talking about it, and I was laughing, and I barely believed you at first because it was such a good story. And I was like, wait, we have to mark off a day on the calendar to tell this and make a Halloween story. It's such a good story.
No, and I appreciate you thinking of that. You're always thinking of things like that we can incorporate into our game plan here. And being Halloween, it only makes sense. But I owned a 16-unit building and an 8-unit building right next to this single-family house, which is 102 North Allen Street in the Pine Hills neighborhood of Albany.
You want to start that over just so we can edit that out?
The phone?
Yeah, just say I owned a 16 unit and an 8 unit.
Sure.
Go ahead, just because I can't edit the phone separately than your voice. So this...
Gotcha. You want me to put the phone away? I was waiting for that guy to possibly call, or just put it on silent.
Just put it on like vibrate. Yeah.
He won't call, but all right, should be good.
All right, take two.
We own a 16 unit at 104, 108 North Allen, and an 8 unit at 89 North Allen Street. One property is right next door to 102 North Allen Street, which I knew the owner for probably 12 or 13 years as I owned these other properties. Him and his dog, old guy, didn't say much. And I probably said 5 words to this gentleman in all these years of being his neighbor. And it was unfortunate that he passed away. And eventually, when someone passes away, it goes to his estate. And someone's going to buy that property eventually. So that it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And fortunately, after sitting on the market for a while, the estate overpriced the house. I had no idea the condition inside, but eventually they reduced the price to an amount that caught my interest. Now it's okay if this property can be purchased at a realistic amount, and depending.
Okay, so 102 North Allen is the haunted property, and is this a single family duplex?
Yeah, it's a single family. So I had lukewarm interest originally because I'm not a yeah, I flip single family homes from time to time, but single family homes, sometimes can be decent rentals, but wasn't my focus at the time.
Hmm. So you didn't jump on it right away, but when it was on the market for
No,
a little while.
no, I just, it was overpriced and it didn't make sense as a rental or even as a flip at the time. And I'm busy doing other things. And
Yep.
eventually, it went from being, like $150,000 offering to down to slowly but surely got down to about 115,000, and that's when it caught my interest.
Hmm.
So eventually I took a look at it, saw the work that needed to be done. No one else was jumping on this at the time. So fortunately I was able to make a low offer and get it at a price that made sense to us to buy it at value, and as a rental it made sense.
So what happened after you started looking at it seriously for yourself? What was next?
Well, we bought the property. We were able to just utilize our private lender at the time, buy it cash, very reasonable terms. Goal was to fix it up and refinance it, put it in the portfolio, and play. We were playing Monopoly on North Allen Street at the time, so this purchase was now one of probably 14 or 15 properties we had in a 4 or 5 block radius. So that was the play at the time. So we bought it in right before Christmas of 2015 or 2016. And, sometimes it takes a little bit. You buy a property, we got a lot of other things going on, so it may sit for a few days or a week as we're planning our process. So one day I come up to the property after we had purchased it, and front door is open. Not open, but unlocked. So I'm like, oh boy. So I walk in and see a strange trail of copper scraps. The brass doorbell chimes are laying on the living room floor. And, it just didn't make that much sense how, you have the scrap metal trail from the front door through the living room into the dining room. The only thing I was thinking of, shit, someone broke in, and based on what I'm seeing, they stole the copper downstairs. So I hurry into the basement, and I was correct. All the copper in the basement was gone.
And so at this point, you were just starting to work on it, so you had materials laid out around the house.
We didn't even start working on it yet. We just purchased it maybe a week ago, and I was just getting in there, probably just getting my reps in, looking at it again, planning the rehab. What are we going to do? What is the potential? And as
Yep.
the owner, I'm basically by myself, doing that job, and knowing that I'll probably have my workers in there in a week or two, to start executing the plan.
And if someone's going to break in and steal copper, they don't usually leave scraps. So that's what really caught your attention, right?
Yeah, and that's, as I was laying this out last night, yeah, I'll get into that, where it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Scrappers don't leave anything behind. So
So,
yeah, so getting back to buying this building just because it was right next door to our other places, and Thomas Morrissey was our neighbor with his old dog. He was this old guy with disheveled hat and always had like a flannel shirt on, the Dockers. So looking back, it's almost picturesque of what we experienced at this house, and how this guy was. So it's very interesting looking back. And yes, we bought this building because Thomas unfortunately had passed away, and when we did buy it, the interest level was buying it cheap. and there was a lot of deferred maintenance. There was a lot of updates needed in the house. You know, he didn't even have a functional kitchen sink. It literally had a piece of plywood over the sink. So
Wow.
I didn't even know what he was using. I think he was using the bathroom, first floor bathroom for whatever he needed for his kitchen. And then he had a large master bedroom upstairs with this strange vanity sink kind of hodgepodge hooked up, where it almost looked like all he was able to do up there was brush his teeth or, whatever he had to do to utilize plumbing up there.
So the house is kind of disheveled, as you mentioned, and that might speak to the character of the previous owner. At this point, you purchased it, you're ready to start doing maintenance, and the copper gets stolen. What happens next?
Yeah, so, part of that planning process was, first of all, lock the house down, making sure that we're not going to get broken in again, because now you feel violated. And, at that point, it's just like, okay, someone out there knows that we have this vacant house, and they know the condition. They just got the copper. So as we're rehabbing it, now I've got to make sure that we're going to protect ourselves from them coming back in and taking building materials that we buy throughout this process. So that was my mindset at the time, and nothing else. But now it's okay. It's December. There's no heat. There's no water. Ultimately, the goal at this point was to have the heat on, because he had a good boiler in there. So that was the one thing with a project like this. I at least thought I was going to be able to just turn on the power, turn on the boiler, and we have heat. So everyone's comfortable being able to build. And, it's comfortable building and allowing building materials to dry with heat. So now we just took 2 steps back in this process. No water lines, no heat. So I had to restore that. So in this business, you always seem to be looking for maintenance guys. At the time, I believe I had 3 guys helping us, and I was looking for a 4th. So I had just hired somebody, a young kid, that was going to be an addition to the maintenance crew. And part of the reason why I hired him was he was coming from an HVAC company, and he claimed to have skills as far as boiler work, restoring water lines, or just hooking up that type of plumbing. So I quickly hired him, knowing that, I know how I can test this kid. The first job he's going to do is restore all the water lines and the lines to the boiler that were removed.
But you and him had no idea what you were getting into.
We had no idea what we were getting into. So it was this young kid. He gave me a material list. No other guys on the crew had been there yet, other than I'll get to the technician that lived next door at 104, 108 North Allen. He was the on-call guy, so he had access to all the keys and stuff like that. So he was able to look at the building whenever he wanted, whenever he had curious time. So I get the material for this young kid, and we get a game plan on how to restore everything in the basement. And off he went, off I went. I don't have time to hang around. I've got a lot of things to do. So I get a call from him not too much later where he's freaking out. So he's like, who else is working in this house? What's going on in this house? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, there's footsteps upstairs. I went upstairs, no one's there. This went on a couple times where he's claiming that as he's working in the basement, trying to get some work done, he hears footsteps, he goes up and no one's there. So I show up and, nothing, what are you talking about? So
I'm getting goosebumps already.
Yeah, I thought this was a new kid. At this point, I'm just like, get to work. Yep. I'm a no-nonsense guy when it comes down to, when I was running a crew and we had to get work done, it was just like, oh boy, I got a new guy. He's talking nonsense. This, now I'm like, all right, this kid's not going to work out.
But could you hear in his voice that there was some real
Looking
fear?
back, yes. Looking
Yeah.
back, yes. And that was his last day. I didn't have to let him go. He actually left some tools behind. He never came back, didn't come back to get his tools, and I never heard from this kid again. So
So he was working in the basement, called you, said, "I hear footsteps." You said, "Get back to work," and he said, "I'm out of here."
not necessarily. It was, and I wasn't a really tough guy type boss, but it was in so many words where it's just like, all right, let's refocus, let's get back to work. Da, 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 da. I was the type of guy if the result wasn't happening after a couple weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes a month, I was the type of boss that would wait a little too long to let someone go because I always wanted to give people a chance.
Yep.
And this guy, I didn't have to give him a chance. After he worked there for 4 or 5 hours that day, I never heard from him again. He never called me. I never called him. He didn't even call me to get paid.
So it must have really spooked him.
So it was interesting, but still I didn't think anything of it. I thought the kid was over his head. He had no idea that I was going to say, hey, do this very skilled work. And he was just like, oh, shit, this guy wants me to do all this work that I claimed that I could do. And I didn't know that he was going to have me do this on day one, and he just couldn't deliver. That's what I thought.
So what happened next?
So at that point, he was long gone, and Steve Rhodes, my on-call emergency tech, lived next door, and I had mentioned it to him. And, Steve was a quirky guy. He's well into his 50s and a real interesting guy. Very skilled at maintenance work, but, I felt like it was a lot of the times, you're dealing with a teenager, in certain ways, if you get my gist. And I mentioned it to him, and he's just like, oh, yeah, the place is haunted. I'm like, what? Because
So this is the first time you're hearing this.
yeah, and he just like I said, he's a curious guy. So, he had been in the house because it's right next door. He knew we bought it. He knew that we were going to be rehabbing it. So he's curious. So he's walking it, and, he's explaining to me. He's like, yeah, there's footsteps going on in there. I was the only one in there. There's footsteps in there. He's like, you don't believe in ghosts? I'm like, I don't know if I believe in ghosts or not. I kind of believe in many things, and I don't know if I believe in other things. I'm a real open-minded type person, but come on. And
so is this when your mind went back to the copper incident?
Not yet. Rhodes was a quirky guy. I can't.
You still weren't convinced.
I can't stress that enough. But he threw that out there. So shortly after, we're doing, we own a lot of buildings. So I'm at another property with my main maintenance tech, Matt. He was installing a hot water heater across town. And I was talking to him about it, just out of fun, small talk. And another maintenance tech, John L., came over to drop Matt off some materials that he needed. And he kind of caught the tail end of the discussion. And John L. at that point was like, you talking about 102 North Allen Street? We're like, yeah. He's like, the dead guy's house? I'm like, yeah. He's just like, I was back there like a month ago behind 102 and 104 North Allen because we had a parking lot in the back. He's like, the curtains are opening and closing, and no one is there to open and close these curtains.
Oh, no.
So, no, I'm like, what are you, so it's always like, give me a break. Are you bullshitting me? Blah, 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 blah. He's like, no. He's like, that place is screwed. I'm like, why didn't you? He's just like, I don't know why I didn't mention it. It was just, it really didn't make that much of a difference at the time, but there's something weird about that house. So me and Matt are like, all right, we've got, the young kid.
no one wants to be the crazy guy who said I saw moving curtains or I heard
So,
footsteps.
so me and Matt, the main guy, my main maintenance tech, I think we're looking at each other like, all right, we've got a bunch of screwballs that work with us.
Hmm.
First of all, you had the young kid. He's gone. Matt barely even knew him. He just knew of him based on taking off after a few hours. Steve Rhodes was interesting in his own way, and so was John L. But, it was funny. It was funny. So now we're getting to a point where we have to dig into this house and do some work. And now Matt is at the property, and the plan was to build a master bathroom off the second floor master bedroom because it was huge. So it was a great improvement to turn this huge master bedroom, put a master bath, and now you had this suite set up on the second floor. So he had to do demolition to do that, and he also had to open up the walls in the dining room below so he could run the plumbing from the second floor down through the first floor walls into the basement to tap into, the sewer main and the water lines. And, Matt doesn't think anything of it. He was a highly skilled, no nonsense guy, didn't say much, but, the type of guy that, he could just look at you a certain way and it was like, oh, whoa. So no one messed with Matt. That's the type of guy he was. And one day he calls me and he's just like, hey, Bill, I have no problem working in here, but I'd really appreciate it if you didn't have me here alone. I'd like to have another guy or two here working with me because I'm opening up the dining room walls. We have no heat. We have no power. We have no water. Nothing at all other than just a vacant house. And the heating lines are throbbing and banging. And Matt has been doing this type of work for a long time, and knowing this type of work, he's able to very logically say, okay, I know what I'm doing. And pipes don't throb and bang when there's no power or water or anything. They just don't.
So he wasn't at the point of I need to get out of here, but it was I need someone here with me.
He might have. I don't know if he didn't scram out of there, but he was qualifying everything basically. Because once again, Matt's not a wussy type guy. This guy is a hard construction guy, and I think had a certain pride about himself. He's a man. He's a real man.
Yeah, but I can't
And
imagine working on a house and everything's supposed to be shut off and silent, and all of a sudden you hear banging on the pipes.
exactly. So when it came right down to it, I think at that point I started taking it a little bit more seriously, or very seriously, because now I had Matt, who, I wouldn't have my main maintenance tech, if he was off, so to speak. And, I was probably there shortly after and arranged to have another guy or two there so we could at least get the demolition done. There was a lot of demolition done so we could prepare for the build, where, we had to tear out the kitchen cabinets, tear out the kitchen floor. He was preparing the upstairs bathroom. We had to do wall preparation, getting it ready for paint. At the same time, I believe I had scheduled a plumber. You've heard me talk about Bob Jones over the years. He might not have been able to get there immediately. So by now, he may have just gotten there, or a couple days later started the work down in the basement, get the pipes back into the boiler and our water lines restored so we could get heat on and water to the property, because we had to do that ASAP so we could functionally do this job.
Mm-hmm.
And, so at that point, now we have 4 people who are experiencing this stuff. So the only thing at this point is, okay, something's going on here. Something's going on here, and now I'm concerned. And, I've probably already brought this story home to my wife, Gretchen, where, it's a fun story. And, you're trying to make sense of it, and you're looking back now at the copper scraps.
Yep.
And exactly what you pointed out in the beginning, if anybody's in this trade or been in the city or dealt with people that scrap metal, it's their habit they take every morsel. So now I'm like, those burglars were terrified when they left there.
They wouldn't have left a trail.
They went in there, they broke in, they've probably broken into many places. They did what they had to do in the basement, tearing out lengths of copper. They saw the antique doorbell on the dining room wall, which had 2 really long brass chimes. And I walked in that morning, and there were bits and pieces of copper and then those chimes laying there.
So they ran out of there.
They ran out of there.
For whatever they heard, it was enough.
They ran out of there, and now it's making sense to me. Okay, the burglars got terrified. That was a no-brainer. The young kid was terrified. He never came back. Steve Rhodes, he believes in ghosts, and he's like, yeah, there's ghosts in there.
It's a normal day for Steve.
John L. is this native of the city of Albany who, I didn't know what was in his mind, but, he had his experience from a month before that when the guy had already passed away. The property was on the market, and it was empty. And, Matt had his experience, and now I'm just connecting the dots. And my wife, Gretchen, who at the time, these types of projects, she was the designer. So she would come in and pick the paint scheme and plan the granite install, pick the kitchen cabinets, the bathroom fixtures, et cetera, et cetera. So, she's like, I ain't going in there, and it gets to a point where it's just like, okay, because I'm like, I know we've got some type of a weird house here, but I still have to. I've got work to do. We've got a lot of money invested in this house, and we've got to do it.
Someone has to go in there and work.
Exactly. So at this point, I don't know what the end game was going to be, but I still had to do business. So, she agreed at this point where Matt was going to be there with a couple guys because it only made sense. And, she was comfortable going there as long as there was a couple guys there where, so everyone's comfortable. So it got to a point where I pretty much had all hands on deck in this house where we're doing the demolition, the basement plumbing's being done, Matt's building, Gretchen's planning her job. So eventually we're hanging sheetrock. We're preparing the walls to paint. We're planning the kitchen cabinets and the fixtures and stuff like that. No, nothing. This stuff doesn't all happen all at one time. It's a process. And, the rehab probably went on for 2.5, 3 months. So now we're, a month and a half in, and there's people there on a regular basis. And nothing else happened. I guess I have to step back just an instant. And before, the walls were put back together, I was the guy that would go to Home Depot and buy all the materials, for these types of projects. So I recall being a Sunday night. I was at the YMCA, or going to the YMCA before it closed on a Sunday, because it closes at like 6. So I had to go to Home Depot, buy like 30 pieces of sheetrock for this project. Went to the YMCA and had to deliver this that Sunday night, so Matt would be able to work at 8 a.m. Monday morning. And, I don't like to scramble around on Monday, so I like to get this stuff to him on Sunday. So I had to deliver a truck filled with materials, at 8 o'clock on Sunday night to this haunted house. And yeah, so, but at the time, I'm kind of in the mindset of Matt, where, all right, I've been doing this type of work for 20 years, and I'm not afraid of no ghosts, where it's just like, whatever, but who am I kidding? The story was built, the story was told, and, I delivered all the sheetrock to the front porch. Normally I'm bringing it in the house.
You didn't go inside?
I think I went in because I'm just like, everybody else has experienced this. So I've got to give it a shot. But what's your mindset Sunday night at 8 o'clock? It's pitch dark. And now I'm like, okay, I want to go in there and experience a ghost.
It's also cold. We're talking, January now in upstate New York?
Yeah, and the house is still like in demolition mode. The sheetrock is on the front porch. I had enough courage to do that. And I went inside, and I think I walked from the living room into the dining room, into the kitchen, and then probably in less than 30 seconds was, all right, everything's good in here. See you later.
Right out of there.
I wasn't going in the basement. I didn't go upstairs.
You never experienced any supernatural?
No.
But there was enough experiences from people that you trusted to make you believe that there was something definitely going on here.
Absolutely. Everybody that was in there dealt with it. And I was just the guy that everybody reported to, and this whole story just evolved, not only through the crew, but to my wife Gretchen, who was planning on working there, who eventually did work in there, and we built the walls, we painted the walls, we did what we were planning on doing in this house. We made this house absolutely beautiful. It was this unique stucco finished house with this interesting floor plan, very unique to Albany. So it's North Allen Street, which we did so much business at. And I knew that we could get, I think at the time we were getting like $1,800 for rent was the goal, which we ultimately did get. So with that, we put in a nice kitchen with granite countertops, tile floor. The upstairs bathroom off that master bedroom was all tile, really nicely done. Refinished the hardwood floors. We made this place very, very nice.
So did you end up selling it or renting it?
Well, I ended up renting it. So, now I'm in that last month where I like to, okay, we're a month away from being done here. Now I'm already proactively thinking, I'm like, all right, I got to market this thing for rent.
Yep.
So now I'm online. Okay, I'm a real estate broker. I just experienced some crazy shit. And we're finishing this house soon. And what is my obligation to the marketplace on renting a haunted house?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I knew that you learn about some of this stuff through some of your real estate continuing ed and stuff like that, where it's touched on for a tad, of what type of disclosure is necessary with certain real estate. Obviously. Material defects, and you're obligated to let the buyer or renter know if there's certain issues with the house that you have to disclose, but there's no disclosure laws on haunted houses.
Uh-oh.
So I didn't have to
Yeah.
disclose.
That's the end of your experience with the house.
So I rented it to these three girls that were young professionals, crossing my fingers that I wasn't going to get a call saying that we just rented your house and it's fucking haunted.
And nothing ever happened, right?
Nothing ever happened the way that I made sense of it throughout this process leading up to renting it and not experiencing any negative feedback was we tore into Thomas Morrissey's house that he had lived in there for I don't know how many years. And he was not happy with having his copper tore out.
That was the first. Someone broke into his house first, and he
Correct.
wasn't happy.
He was not happy. He was not happy with us doing demolition to his walls.
Yep. And next he had a young kid in his basement. He doesn't know what's going on. Doesn't like it.
He's not happy with someone in his master bedroom tearing the floors out. We're preparing it to put in a master bath. We're tearing apart his house. Mm-hmm. He's pissed off.
Starts banging on pipes.
Or whatever. And then, as that timeline happens, like right around when my wife was there, and now we're building. Now we're making it beautiful. Thomas, we knew each other. We didn't say much to each other, but I was a guy that was running a 16-unit building right next to his house, and everything was always pretty kosher. And I think that we had a certain respect for each other as neighbors. We never had a beef with each other. And
once you got to the point of fixing up the house and making it look pretty, he was okay. He was happy.
That's it. That's it.
And maybe having three young women in his house didn't upset him too much, and he never caused a problem.
That's how I made sense of it.
How else can you?
That's it. And we rented it to those girls. They lived there for probably 2 or 3 years. We rented it to 3 younger guys shortly after that. And, sold it in October of 2020.
There's enough there for it to be considered a haunted house story.
Whatever.
The copper scraps, that's the one that gets me.
Well, the
cops didn't call you, so it wasn't like the police showed up or anything, so something happened.
I did have the police there after the copper scraps, but in cases like this, the police show up and say, yeah, we'll make note of it.
Yeah, but it's not like the police called you and said, hey, we saw these people.
No.
They didn't see them breaking in and then showing the flashlight, and that's why they ran out. Something happened while they were in there.
No, I called the police the next day, brought them over. They looked around, they took note of it, and what are they going to do? Just like in a lot of cases where, once it's done, it's done. But I can tell you one thing: the burglars never came back during. They didn't break back into this house.
Yep. As most supernatural stories go, there's no hard evidence here, and you didn't even experience anything yourself. But there's enough where you start getting a little bit of goosebumps talking about it.
Well, and this is how I make sense of things. A lot of things in life, especially this story, is as we're going through the process. I still didn't have the balls to go in there and deliver my sheetrock, but how often in the media do you hear of somebody being attacked by a ghost?
I don't think I ever have.
So I'm able to make sense of it through this process of, okay, I care about my guys. I care about people that I'm sending in there to work. But, I don't know of any evidence of a maintenance technician being attacked by a ghost while they're doing work.
If it was a good ghost, he wouldn't leave behind any evidence.
So that's the story.
I think that's a good Halloween story, a good Halloween special. It has a little bit of real estate investing in it, but it's a lot of Halloween fun as well.
Yeah, cash flowed really well. To really wrap it up on an investment basis is, we bought it for $85,000. I was able to utilize my commission as a real estate broker to lessen that price 2 or 3 grand because I got 3% off. We put about $40,000 into it, so we're into this thing for I don't know, $125,000. We rented it for $1,800 for 4 or 5 years. Sold it for 185. So we made a nice margin on it. It cash flowed for 4 or 5 years, and that's the story.
So that's a good flip, a successful flip. And another little piece, as we were looking up information for this episode, we Googled the previous owner. And according to a lot of records on Google, he's still alive, and he's 84 years old.
Yeah, as I was preparing for this last night, writing this up, I had to Google it because I was Googling the hell out of it, 5 years ago because I was freaking out. But yeah, I look up Thomas Morrissey, 102 North Allen Street, Albany, New York, and he's now 84. As of last night, he was 84 years old, but he had passed away, at least 5 or 6 years ago.
But he might still be hanging out in that house. We hope everyone enjoyed the episode and has a happy Halloween.
Thomas Morrissey's a real nice guy at this point.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Bill.
Thank you.